A supermarket can sell more than $500,000 worth of groceries every single week and still make surprisingly little money. Think about that. Thousands of customers walk through the doors. Carts are filled with meat, milk, vegetables, cereal, drinks, snacks, cleaning products, and everything else people need to live. The registers keep ringing. Hundreds of thousands of dollars move through the store. Millions move through it every month. So you would think owning a successful supermarket would be an incredible business. But here's the strange part. The average food retailer operates on an extremely thin net profit margin. In 2025, FMI reported average net profit margins for food retailers of around 2.1%. That means if a supermarket generates $100 in sales, it might ultimately keep only about $2 after the entire business is paid for. $2. The other $98 has somewhere else to go. So where does all that money disappear? And more importantly, if supermarkets make so little money, why do companies keep opening them? Why are some grocery chains worth billions? And how can a business with margins this thin survive for decades? The answer is that supermarkets aren't really in the business of making huge amounts of money on individual products. They're in the business of moving enormous amounts of products extremely efficiently over and over again. And once you understand how that works, the supermarket you visit every week starts looking completely different. So let's follow $100 through a supermarket and see where it actually goes. Imagine you walk into a supermarket and spend exactly $100. You buy chicken, rice, milk, eggs, vegetables, cereal, snacks, drinks, maybe some cleaning products. At the checkout, you tap your card and the supermarket records $100 in sales. But the supermarket did not make $100. Not even close. The first person who gets paid is the supplier. The supermarket had to purchase those products before you ever walk through the door. If the store spends $75 acquiring the products it eventually sells you for $100, the supermarket has $25 left. That $25 is gross margin. And at first glance, $25 from every 100 sounds pretty good. But that is where the expensive part of the business actually begins. The supermarket needs a building. Maybe it owns the property. Maybe it rents it. Either way, that building costs money. Then you need employees, cashiers, stockers, managers, butchers, bakery workers, cleaners, security, maintenance, warehouse workers, drivers, and management. A supermarket isn't a business you can run with 3 people sitting behind a desk. Someone has to unload the trucks. Someone has to put the products on the shelves. Someone has to check expiration dates. Someone has to clean the store. Someone has to manage the inventory. Someone has to deal with customers. And someone has to keep the entire operation running. Then comes electricity. And this is where grocery stores are particularly expensive. A supermarket is basically a giant refrigeration system that happens to sell food. Freezers run constantly. Refrigerated shelves run constantly. Lighting runs for most of the day. Air conditioning keeps customers comfortable and helps protect products. And unlike many businesses, you can't simply shut everything down when customers leave. The food is still sitting there. The refrigerators still need to work. The freezers still need to stay cold. The security systems still need to operate. So even when the store isn't making a sale, the business is still spending money. And then there is one expense customers almost never think about. Food that never gets sold. Imagine a supermarket orders 100 packages of strawberries. 95 sell. 5 don't. Those 5 don't simply disappear from the accounting system. The supermarket paid for them. Maybe they become overripe. Maybe they have to be thrown away. The same thing happens with meat, bread, vegetables, dairy products, and thousands of other items. Every product that expires is money the supermarket spent but never recovered. And this is one of the biggest challenges in grocery retail. The store needs enough inventory so customers don't walk in and see empty shelves. But it doesn't want so much inventory that products expire before they sell. Too little inventory means lost sales. Too much inventory means waste. The supermarket is constantly trying to find the exact middle. Then there is theft. A customer walks into a store, picks up a product, walks out. No comment. One product doesn't sound like much. But multiply that across hundreds of stores, thousands of employees, millions of customers, and millions of transactions. Suddenly, the number becomes very serious. FMI reported that theft and fraud remain major challenges for food retailers, with a large majority of retailers identifying them as significant operational problems. And then there are payment processing fees. You tap your card. The transaction takes 2 seconds, but money is moving through banks, card networks, and payment processors. And when a supermarket processes millions or billions of dollars in transactions, tiny percentages become huge numbers. So that $100 you spend is already being divided between suppliers, employees, landlords, utilities, banks, payment processors, waste, and theft. And we haven't even talked about marketing, or insurance, or transportation, or maintenance, or technology, or taxes. This is why supermarket economics is so strange. A supermarket can have billions of dollars in revenue and still operate on a tiny net margin. Take Kroger as an example. The company generated approximately $147.6 billion in sales in fiscal 2025. That's an enormous number. But after the costs of operating the business, the amount left as operating profit was a small fraction of that revenue. And that tells you something important. Supermarkets don't win because every product has a massive markup. They win because they sell an enormous number of products. Volume is the engine. Imagine making $2 of profit from every $100 of sales. That doesn't sound exciting. But now imagine doing it on $1 million of sales. That's $20,000. Do it on $10 million. That's $200,000. Do it on $100 million. That's $2 million. The margin is small. The volume is enormous. And that's why location matters so much. A supermarket in the wrong location can be a disaster. You can have the best products, the best employees, the best building. But if customers don't want to drive there, the economics don't work. Now, put that same store beside a busy road, surrounded by thousands of households, with easy parking and limited competition. Suddenly, the numbers can change dramatically. More customers, more transactions, more inventory turnover, more sales per square foot. And many of the store's fixed costs don't increase at the same rate. The building doesn't suddenly become twice as expensive because sales doubled. The manager doesn't necessarily need twice the salary. The refrigeration system doesn't necessarily double in size. So when sales increase while many costs stay relatively fixed, more of each additional dollar can contribute toward profit. This is operating leverage. And supermarket chains spend enormous amounts of time trying to maximize it. They don't just ask, how much did this store sell? They ask, how much did this store sell per square foot? How much inventory does it carry? How quickly does that inventory sell? How much waste does it generate? How many employees are needed? How much energy does the building consume? Every square foot has to earn its place. Because if you're paying for 40,000 square feet of retail space, you don't want 20,000 square feet of it sitting there producing nothing. And this is where supermarkets become much smarter than they appear, because they don't need to make the same amount of money on every product. Think about milk, eggs, bread, bananas. Customers know roughly what these things cost. If one supermarket suddenly charges dramatically more than its competitors, customers notice. So supermarkets compete aggressively on certain products. Sometimes they even use specific products as price signals. The store wants you to think, that's cheap. And once you're inside, you're already surrounded by hundreds or thousands of other products. This is where the supermarket makes its money across the entire basket. Maybe you came in for milk, but you also bought cereal, chicken, snacks, a drink, cleaning products, and something from the bakery. The supermarket doesn't need to make a fortune on the milk. It needs the entire basket to work. And that leads to another major weapon, private label products. You've seen them everywhere. The supermarket's own cereal, its own bottled water, its own pasta, its own snacks, its own cleaning products. Private label products allow retailers to offer cheaper alternatives while maintaining more control over the economics of the product. Instead of simply selling somebody else's brand, the retailer can build its own. And if customers like that product, the supermarket gets something even more valuable. Loyalty, because supermarkets aren't just competing over products. They're competing for your weekly shopping trip. If you always shop at the same store, that store gets something incredibly valuable. Predictable revenue. You become a recurring customer. Every week, every month, year after year. And that is why supermarket loyalty programs are so important. The store can learn what you buy, how often you buy it, what promotions you respond to, which products you buy together, and what makes you switch stores. That data can be used to make the entire operation more efficient. If customers in one neighborhood buy more organic food, the store can stock more organic products. If another neighborhood is extremely price sensitive, the store can adjust its product mix. If a certain product barely sells, the supermarket can reduce its inventory. The goal isn't simply to sell more products. It's to sell the right products. Because inventory sitting on a shelf is money that isn't working. The faster the supermarket can sell something, replace it, and sell something else in that same space, the more productive that shelf becomes. The same thing applies to the entire building. The supermarket is constantly trying to make every square foot work harder. And if you're enjoying these business breakdowns, subscribe to the channel. Because we don't just look at what a business sells. We break down where the money comes from, where it disappears, what the risks are, and what it would actually take to own the business yourself. Now, let's get back to the supermarket because this is where the economics gets even more interesting. The supermarket has another advantage that many businesses don't have. People have to eat. That doesn't make grocery stores recession-proof. When the economy gets worse, customers can trade down. They can buy cheaper brands. They can buy fewer premium products. They can move from expensive supermarkets to discount stores. But the underlying demand for food doesn't disappear. That creates something incredibly valuable. Recurring demand. But recurring demand doesn't mean guaranteed profit. The supermarket is constantly being squeezed from both directions. Suppliers want to charge more. Customers don't want to pay more. Employees want higher wages. Owners want higher profits. Landlords want higher rent. Electricity prices can rise. Transportation costs can rise. Food prices can rise. And the supermarket is stuck in the middle. Imagine your supplier raises the price of chicken by 10%. You have two choices. Raise your price and risk losing customers, or absorb the increase and accept a smaller margin. Neither option is particularly attractive. This is why purchasing power matters. A supermarket chain with hundreds of stores can negotiate differently from a small independent grocery store. If you are buying thousands of cases of products every week, suppliers want your business. That scale can translate into better purchasing terms. And this creates a cycle. More stores can mean more purchasing power. More purchasing power can mean better prices. Better prices can mean more competitive retail prices. More competitive prices can attract more customers. More customers create more sales. More sales make the chain more powerful. That is one reason scale is so important in grocery retail. But scale also creates enormous complexity. Imagine managing 10 stores. Now imagine managing 100. Now imagine 1,000. A mistake that costs one store $10,000 becomes a $10 million problem across 1,000 locations. The same multiplication works in the opposite direction. If you save each store $1,000 a week through better inventory management, energy efficiency, or purchasing, across 1,000 stores, that's $1 million every week. More than $50 million a year. That is the supermarket game. Tiny improvements multiplied by enormous scale. And now we can finally understand why the industry can survive on such thin margins. The supermarket isn't trying to make 20% profit. It's trying to make 2% on an enormous amount of revenue. Let's make the numbers simple. Suppose a supermarket generates $30 million in annual sales. At a 2% net margin, that's about $600,000 in profit. $600,000 sounds excellent. But look at everything required to produce it. Millions of dollars of inventory. A large building, employees, refrigeration, utilities, insurance, security, technology, transportation, maintenance, waste management, marketing, working capital, and constant operational management. You're not buying a building and collecting passive income. You're operating a massive machine every day. And that is why owning a supermarket is not necessarily a passive business. It's a logistics business disguised as a retail store. The products are only one part of the equation. The real business is the system behind them. The location, the supply chain, the purchasing power, the inventory management, the customer data, the employees, the technology, and the ability to turn all of those pieces into thousands of transactions every single day. And there is one final number that puts the entire business into perspective. FMI reported that the average supermarket generated roughly $668,000 in weekly sales in 2025. That's more than $34 million in annual sales if that pace continues for an entire year. And yet the average food retailer's net margin is only around 2%. So the supermarket isn't a money-printing machine. It's a volume machine. It takes tiny margins, multiplies them across enormous sales, and repeats the process every day. That is the secret. The supermarket doesn't become rich because one customer spends $100. It becomes valuable because thousands of customers spend $100. And then they come back next week, and the week after, and the week after that. So would I own a supermarket? Maybe, but only under very specific conditions. I would want an excellent location, strong purchasing power, a highly efficient supply chain, low waste, good inventory turnover, a strong private label strategy, and enough capital to survive the periods when margins get squeezed. Because this is not a business where one brilliant decision makes you rich. It's a business where thousands of small decisions determine whether you make money. Get inventory slightly wrong, you lose money. Get staffing wrong, you lose money. Get pricing wrong, you lose customers. Get the location wrong, you may never recover. Get the supply chain wrong, your competitors can beat you on price. But get all of those things right, and suddenly you have something extremely powerful. A business selling products people need every single week. That is why some of the biggest retail companies in the world are grocery businesses. The margins are tiny, but the machine is enormous. And that is the real economics of owning a supermarket. The next time you walk into a grocery store and spend $100, remember, the supermarket doesn't get to keep that $100. Most of it is already spoken for. The supplier wants its money. Employees want their wages. The landlord wants rent. The utility company wants payment. The payment processor takes its cut. Some products will expire. Some will be damaged. Some will be stolen. And after everything is paid, only a small amount remains. That's the strange economics of grocery retail. Huge revenue does not mean huge profit. The supermarket wins by doing something much harder. Taking tiny margins, multiplying them across millions of transactions, and doing it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. If you enjoyed this breakdown, let me know in the comments. Would you actually own a supermarket if you had the money to buy one? And if you want more videos breaking down how real businesses make money, where their profits actually come from, and what could destroy them, subscribe to the channel. Because the next business might look simple from the outside too. But once we follow the money, the story usually gets a lot more interesting.